You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes, and welcome to the show. It is Tuesday, June 3rd, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. We're so glad you can be here with us today on, again, our beginning of our third year of the independent Russ Belville Show. And joining us by Skype in our remote Denver bureau, we have our good friend and newly coined named Priscilla Seiben on the phone. How you doing, Priscilla?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I thought you were going to be outside today.
I was. It really got windy in Colorado. We were hoping to hit 91, but it's pretty windy here.
Oh, all right. Well, we'll get you in the news in our next segment. We'll be talking to you and getting all the latest headlines that are happening in the cannabis community, and also looking forward in the future to getting you out to some of those Denver events. We're going to send you a camcorder so that you can record some of that stuff for us. What do you think of that?
Oh, I'm so excited. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got 2 Zoom cams. I'll send you one of them, and we'll send you out to the 710 Cup and all the other events that are happening there in Denver. Perhaps get you free passes and everything like that, too. So thanks for joining us.
Sure, yeah, look forward to it.
All right, coming up on today's show, we have got all sorts of great information for you if you're interested in the legalization of marijuana. Today, at 5:30, we're going to get into our drug war data mining segment. This is the segment where we give you a free tutorial on how to use government databases to make the case for marijuana legalization. So check it out today. We're going to be debunking that scaremongering about triple the fatal marijuana drivers in wrecks in Colorado. That's one that the prohibitionists have liked to been saying lately, and we'll show you why it is just scaremongering hype and has nothing to do with the real statistics. Also on the show today, there's a report that came out that I'm sure Kevin Sabet is salivating over, but it actually doesn't say what he wants it to say, and that is that big tobacco actually fears the legalization of marijuana, as people might switch and pick the healthier alternative. We'll take a look at some of the documents that were unearthed by University of Pennsylvania researchers that go back to the 60s and 70s and look at some of the internal memoranda of the big tobacco companies. I'll give you some select quotes in today's Behind the Headlines segment. Also, at the end of the show, we'll have time for a radical rant. We're taking a look at New York State, where Governor Andrew Cuomo has just signed an agreement with GW Pharmaceuticals to supply CBD oil for a clinical trial. We'll show you how that CBD oil and the Box Canyon are conspiring here to derail medical marijuana efforts in New York State and throughout the country. Also on the show today, we'll have our 420 radio news. As we mentioned, Priscilla Seiben will be bringing you that in the first segment after this first break. And then stay tuned for hour 2, Toker Talk Radio, where we let our hair down, take off our suit and tie, and have ourselves a little bit of fun and take your calls at 971-533-7111. We'll also get our daily dose of Toker tunes from Electric Bob for this Electric Tuesday, where we celebrate the best in experimental and scientific music. We have a lot of science songs that we like to play on Tuesdays. Also, stay tuned for later tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific time, where we'll have Electric Bob's Boogaloo, a 1-hour non-stop dance mix of some of the best electronic music out there with our own Electric Bob. You can catch a preview at 5 o'clock. That'll be last week's episode, and then you can catch this week's episode new at 8 o'clock. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Priscilla Seiben with our 420 radio news.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, your ticket to the High Times Cannabis Cups. The Marijuana Business Association, or MJBA, are proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show. It is the mission of the MJBA to establish integrity and legitimacy, create common market standards, provide market intelligence, and develop best ethical business practices for participants in the emerging legal marijuana industry, including commercial hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational marijuana for adults. Learn more about the Marijuana Business Association and visit mjba.net to join today. That's mjba.net. Check out our Wednesday replay partners beginning at 10 Pacific with Hemp Radio from California. At 11 Pacific, we've got Drug Truth Network Cultural Baggage from Texas. At 12 Pacific, Cannabis Network Radio from Florida. And at 1 Pacific, Free Weed from Danny Danko from New York. Right here on 420radio.org. The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
And now it's time for our 420 Radio News for Tuesday, June 3rd, 2014. This is Priscilla Seiben. Oh, we have you on mute, Priscilla, I'm afraid.
There we go. Technical difficulties. All good to go.
It's okay. It's only day 2. Go right ahead.
Very well then. So this is your 420 Radio News, Tuesday, June 3rd. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has signed an agreement with British corporation GW Pharmaceuticals to provide its patented CBD-only medication for clinical trials. The drug, Epidiolex, is the pharmaceutical version of the high CBD oil used to treat childhood epilepsy that was popularized in the Dr. Sanjay Gupta documentaries Weed and Weed 2. The New York Health Department will now complete its development of the clinical trial that will need approval from the Food and Drug Administration to proceed. An anonymous state source confided that they expect FDA approval rather quickly. The New York legislature is currently considering 2 medical marijuana bills, one that would allow sufferers of certain conditions to use whole plant marijuana, and another which is a, quote, Minnesota-style medical marijuana proposal that would allow no access to smoked plant marijuana, just vaporizers, oils, pills, and edibles.
What an amazing bit of timing that the governor of New York is signing this agreement with GW Pharma to provide CBD oil just as the New York legislature is trying to decide on bills that would provide far more access to medical marijuana for not just children and not just CBD, but also THC and adults. We'll talk more about that when we get to our radical rant at the end of the show.
In another study designed to find something terrible about marijuana use, University of Pennsylvania researchers have found a correlation between early marijuana use and sleep difficulties. Jilesh Chedda is the lead author of the research that will be presented at the 28th annual meeting of the Associated Professional Sleep Societies, LLC. Chedda said, quote, "There is a strong relationship with age of first use, no matter how often people were currently using marijuana. People who started using early were more likely to have sleep problems as an adult," end quote. Chedda's team analyzed data collected from the 2007-2008 National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey and determined that the results from the 1,811 adults they surveyed showed both current and former marijuana users are more likely to experience sleep difficulties. The survey does not show causation, and it is possible people began or their marijuana use to treat insomnia, for example.
Right. That's the thing about these kind of analyses. When you take a look at a database and you try to correlate this variable with that variable, all you're finding is a correlation. You're not finding that one caused the other. It's not that marijuana use is causing sleep difficulties. It could very well be that people with sleep difficulties tend to use marijuana. I know in my case that before I had ever used marijuana, I always had trouble getting to sleep. I have one of these brains that you just can't turn off, right? I'm always thinking of something. I'd go to bed and be thinking about what I'm going to do the next day and thinking about how my day is going to go. And I found early on with marijuana use that it kind of relaxed me and it made me calm down and kind of shut my brain up long enough that I could get some decent sleep. Priscilla, you're nodding. Is that similar for you? Do you find that with cannabis use?
Yeah, totally. I can understand that because it's definitely a relaxant and it helps you just turn your brain off. And, you also got to remember you're going to have tomorrow to wake up and think about all those exciting things too. So
that's right. And considering how much people in this country are using things like Ambien or having a drink or two or say 3 24-ounce 8% beers that you can't get at a Colorado store unless you go to a liquor store, in those cases, you're doing so much more harm to yourself than you would be with the marijuana to be getting a good night's sleep. The one part that I did find interesting is when they said that people who started using early as a young adult or even earlier as an adolescent were more likely to have sleep difficulties, even if they were no longer using marijuana. And that just goes again to us talking about why we want to legalize marijuana for adults, to try to keep it away from the kids and their developing brains where it might have some sort of effect like messing up how they sleep throughout their adulthood.
Right. Monitor the long-term effects. So as Washington State prepares to roll out marijuana stores in July, some border towns are deciding whether or not to allow the pot shops. Liberty Lake, which borders Idaho, has passed a 6-month moratorium on retail marijuana shops and may decide this summer to ban shops and processors altogether. Quote, "Personally, I don't want Liberty Lake to be known as a tourist destination to buy your marijuana," says Chris Kaminskas, a city councilwoman and mayor pro tem. Quote, "That's just not what our city is about," end quote. But Allison Holcomb, the ACLU attorney who wrote I-502, believes such bans are illegal, despite the opinion of State Attorney General Bob Ferguson that cities may ban pot shops. Quote, "Obviously," says Holcomb, "allowing counties to ban licensed marijuana businesses altogether would make it impossible to provide adequate legal resources to undercut the black market," end quote. Meanwhile, the city of North Bonneville, bordering Oregon, may go into the pot business itself. Mayor Don Stevens says that the city-run pot shop would put the council in control and explains, we've got streets that need to be paved. We've got stuff that every small community needs to pay for and less money to do those things."
Wow. One of the proposals that I had heard, and I believe this is Seattle City Attorney Pete Holmes that had proposed this, or at least was writing about it, was these localities are complaining that, that marijuana has become legalized and there's going to be all this crime and attendant problems, but they won't have the resources or money to be able to deal with it. So they want a slice of the marijuana tax pie. So the proposal was, all right, you want a slice of the marijuana tax pie, you got to allow marijuana stores, because the whole point of writing I-502 was to try to put the black market out of business and put the state control and regulation and taxation of marijuana into business. These localities that want to do a pot shop ban are doing so through simple bigotry. That's all it is. When you read Chris Kaminskas' opinions on this, she was saying, well, we're a family-friendly place. We're all about family. Those aren't our kind of businesses. Those aren't our type of people. That's what I hear when I hear talk like that. And this idea that if you're going to ban it, that somehow there wouldn't be marijuana tourism from Idaho coming across to your town. Well, it's just not going to be the case. There's always been marijuana use. There will always be marijuana use. Trying to ban it just keeps it underground where you can't do anything about it. They need to take the move here of Mayor Don Stevens there in North Bonneville. The idea of a city-run pot shop actually sounds all right to me, as long as they're, competing with everyone else on a level playing field. Why not have a city reaping some of the benefits of this? I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. And you can make money, so much money. We see it here in Denver.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, and I was just saying we make so much money here in Colorado. There's so many benefits from it.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't look like your streets are running red with blood and zombies are packing the freeways or anything. So looks like everything's okay. What's up next?
So the Rhode Island Senate Judiciary Committee will be hearing debate on the Marijuana Regulation, Control, and Taxation Act today. The Act, SB 2379, will allow adults 21 and older to possess 1 ounce of marijuana and grow 1 plant at home in an enclosed locked space. The Act would also create a regulated system of marijuana producers and retailers and tax the marijuana at the wholesale and retail levels, providing an estimated $20 to $80 million in tax revenue annually. According to recent polls, 53% of Rhode Islanders support regulating marijuana similarly to alcohol.
Wow. Yeah. An ounce and a whole plant. 1 whole plant. You better hope it's a good plant. You better hope you don't get mites or mold or mildew or, oh my God. This is one of the things they never consider when they write these laws. You know, they seem to want to make it restrictive and they don't understand unintended consequences. That is, if you're allowed to grow just 1 plant and then that plant has a problem, then you're forced to either go to the black market or to, the pot shops. If you allow people to grow, a decent amount of plants, and I tend to believe that a 10-foot by 10-foot canopy, I don't like plant counts. I like, space. 10-foot by 10-foot canopy would be enough for most growers that I know.
Yeah, but it's easy to maintain too. All right, so next up, we got your money smelling like marijuana is reason enough for the federal government to take it from you. The DEA received a tip that a man would be flying out of the Minneapolis airport with a large quantity of, quote, drug money. The feds stopped him and ran a drug-sniffing dog over his bags. The dog alerted on 2 of the bags, which the man told the feds contained the cash proceeds of his bingo business. There were no drugs in the bags, but the cash did smell of marijuana. Last week, a U.S. district judge entered a default judgment in favor of the federal government's right to keep this man's smelly money that totaled over $138,000. No criminal charges were ever filed against the man.
It's legalized theft is what it is. It's just legalized theft. The idea that you got a bag of $125,000, $130,000 and it smells like marijuana, therefore it must be marijuana money, must be the proceeds of marijuana dealing, is absolutely ludicrous. Could be this guy runs a bingo business and also likes to smoke pot. It has nothing to do with the money had nothing to do with, selling pot or growing pot. He likes to smoke pot. He's been around pot. The money's been around pot, and boom, you lose it. The guy he never came back to fight for his money. And so that always leads the people to say, oh, well, he must have had something to hide. He didn't want to come back but you never get that chance, especially when $130,000 is taken from you, where are you supposed to raise the money to fight for the $130,000 they took from you? It's insane.
Yeah. All right, so there's a new kind of coffee brewing in the Pacific Northwest, and it's cannabis infused. Mirth Provisions is the company behind the new cold brewed coffee called Legal, which contains about 20 milligrams of THC per bottle. Regulators in Colorado, who have been grappling with the unintended consequences of uneducated consumers overdosing on cannabis-infused edibles, have set their state's serving limit at 10 milligrams of THC. Washington has no such regulations, and Mirth expects to also manufacture cannabis-infused fruit-flavored sodas. A bottle will likely sell for $9 to $11.
Yeah, I understand why these infused drinks, infused edibles are becoming popular. Some people have an aversion to smoking. They think it's a nasty, wicked habit. Other people might want to have, the stealth of being able to have a drink or a brownie that is not going to be detectable at a concert or indoors or whatever. Personally, I've never really been a fan of edibles because when I take a drug, I like to feel it and know what's going on, so when I smoke marijuana, I can immediately feel how high I am and whether or not I should smoke anymore. If I drink a whole soda or a iced coffee on a hot day, and I down 4 of those, without realizing how much of the THC is coming into my body, that could lead to some problems. And that's what's happening in Denver with some of these people, right?
Yeah, you gotta, everything in moderation. You can't go crazy on it. But I've had some of those refreshments, and they're very tasty. And the limits or the effects take a little while to reach you. But when you get there, it's a nice little head change.
Yeah, seems a little bit almost like the old. What was it, old Mitch Hedberg joke where he'd put a humidifier and a dehumidifier in a room and let them fight it out? We're going to put cannabis in a caffeine beverage. So it's going to be, maybe there's a little conflict there. They'll be fighting it out. What do you think?
I think so. It's a bit of an oxymoron. We'll see how it turns out.
Coffee and weed, that's what comedian Rob Cantrell always called a hippie speedball. So maybe we'll see how that turns out. All right. Well, thank you, Priscilla.
Yeah, thanks again. See you tomorrow.
All right. School is out. News is done. That means it's 4:20 in Denver at our Denver bureau. So it looks pretty windy back there. Get yourself a good torch lighter and light something up. We'll be back with our Behind the Headlines right after this.
.420 Radio, turning red states and blue states green. Adam Hand of Handmade Apparel produces quality custom designs for t-shirts, hats, and other apparel. Handmade Apparel is the official design shop for 420 Radio among many clients who rely on Adam Hand for everything from short-run custom projects to full-run clothing lines. Visit handmadeapparel.biz to browse the selection of handmade gear or to get a personal quote for your own designs. Handmade Apparel, a proud supporter of 420radio.org.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks may be far less than those posed by legal drugs.
Growing plants indoors can be a rewarding hobby, but electricity bills can go through the roof. Then you have to cool down all those big hot lights. It can drive a grower insane. With Lush LED lighting, you can solve many of these issues and double your rewards. Matt and his scientists have developed the perfect light for flowering plants with far less cost and heat. And the results? Very effective. Check out LushLEDlighting.com right now and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
Welcome back, folks. Time for us to go behind the headlines. And today we're going to be taking a look at this newly unearthed documents. These newly unearthed documents, they were part of the Big Tobacco Master Settlement Agreement. And they've recently been scanned and text annotated. And some researchers have gone through this to find some information that I'm sure Kevin Sabet right now is cutting and pasting to try to show that there's evidence that, Big Tobacco wants to take over the marijuana industry. It's going to be just like Big Tobacco with Joe Camel and lying to kids and lying about how healthy it is. And, it's going to be terrible. Big Tobacco's on its way. And as I first got this, I was a little concerned because I saw some of the quotes that had been placed in Time magazine and all. And I thought, this does look a little bad, but maybe I ought to just look it up for myself. So I did. And I got to this document. And what I really found in this is the fear of Big Tobacco that marijuana legalization is, quote, the only real threat to our business. That's right. The Big Tobacco industries of the 60s and 70s weren't so much concerned about getting in the cannabis market because they wanted to take it over. It was because they wanted to prevent the competition. The latest paper from the Center for Tobacco Control Research and Education at UC San Francisco shows that tobacco executives of the 1970s feared marijuana, legalized marijuana, as a product that would become a healthier alternative to their tobacco cigarettes. And they were considering ways which they could capture the cannabis market despite repeated public denials of their interest in the cannabis market. Here's one quote from a Philip Morris top management memo from the 1970s, actually from 1970. Quote, "We are in the business of relaxing people who are tense and providing a pickup for people who are bored or depressed. The human needs that our product fills will not go away. Thus, The only real threat to our business is that society will find other means of satisfying these needs." End quote. Another report to the British tobacco industries from 1976 noted, quote, "There is an obvious danger that if more restrictions are placed on tobacco, and if the marijuana habit notches up further small advances in legality, many people may switch from one to the other in their search for a form of escape from our neurotic civilization." End quote. Of course, we have seen more restrictions on tobacco, and we have seen its rapid decline in use by Americans, especially by young people, who are now more likely to have tried marijuana than cigarettes. The 1976 memo even noted that, quote, "Marijuana supporters would claim that was a net improvement from the health aspect," end quote, and warned that tobacco companies marketing marijuana cigarettes, quote, "would be extremely bad public relations, because the goal of minimizing the health risks of cigarettes, quote, would be entirely defeated if tobacco were productively and commercially equated with marijuana," end quote. Now, the researchers conclude that the tobacco companies, quote, "are prepared to enter the marijuana market with the intention of increasing its already widespread use," end quote, echoing Kevin Sabet's favorite talking point about the threat of big marijuana. The researchers conclude, quote, "Policymakers and public health authorities should develop and implement policies that would prevent the tobacco industry from becoming directly involved in the burgeoning marijuana market." Well, I couldn't agree more on that. Why let stodgy old Philip Morris dominate the marijuana industry when we can build a shiny new marijuana industry that benefits our consumers and producers while protecting the public from the kinds of abuses wrought by big tobacco? We've already agreed to advertising and storefront regulations more restrictive than retail restrictions on pornography. Our industry organizations are leading the charge in promoting effective, child-proof packaging and labeling. And of course, nothing our big marijuana industry could do would ever match the devastation to society wrought by today's big marijuana, the Mexican cartels, violent criminals, and street-dealing kids running the current market. The fact is that the state-by-state marijuana legalization that is unfolding is precisely the kind of incubator for a distributed, competitive, well-regulated marijuana market and an insulator from the multinational tobacco corporations that this paper is calling for. So long as marijuana is federally illegal, no big tobacco company can get involved with it without becoming bait for the next federal prosecutor looking to haul them into court, where they haven't been very successful lately. And state laws on residency and investment are producing brand new millionaires and increased tax revenues and new jobs for the people of the states that pass these legalization initiatives, not for multinational tobacco companies that avoid paying taxes by moving jobs and assets offshore. If you really want to hurt big tobacco, you want to legalize marijuana. All right, folks, time for us to take a break. And when we come back, it's time for some drug war data mining. We're going to look at accident and fatality statistics compiled by our own federal government. And then a radical rant at the end of the show, New York and the Box Canyon.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio. Tune in, turn on, get highly educated. Wood Pipe Smoke Shop and Speakeasy is your source for cannabis community gear in southern Wisconsin. Owners Brian and Tammy Wood are located in Kendall, just outside of Madison, and they've got everything for the smoking enthusiast. They're open noon to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday and can help you with your detoxification therapies as well. Call 608-466-7473 or email woodpipes@yahoo.com for more information. Check out our replay partners every Monday, starting at 10 Pacific with Weeducated Talk Radio from Arizona. At 11 Pacific, we've got Drug Truth Network, Century of Lies from Texas. At 12 Pacific, we've got Weed Porn Daily from Florida. And at 1 Pacific, we've got Stony Sundays from California, right here on 420radio.org. I'm Radical Russ Belville, and I want to thank you for listening to 420 Radio. We couldn't survive without you and our sponsors, and I'd like you to check out one of our prime sponsors, the National Cannabis Coalition. I've been working with NCC since June of 2012, and I'm proud to be part of the team they have assembled. National Cannabis Coalition is building the partnerships with reformers, lawmakers, and industry we need to be successful. Visit the National Cannabis Coalition website at nationalcannabiscoalition.com or the easier-to-remember ncc420.com. That's where you'll get the exclusive first look at my radical rants, as well as informative articles from the nation's top cannabis pundits. Visit ncc420.com today, and if you have your phone handy, text Russ to 420-420 to support NCC and 420 Radio. It's a free text message that helps us help you end adult marijuana prohibition. Learn more at ncc420.com, and thanks for supporting independent marijuana legalization public radio. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Time for some drug war data mining. And today we're going to be taking a look at the statistic that is often provided by opponents of marijuana legalization to say that there's been a tripling of drivers involved in fatality crashes who test positive for THC or its metabolite. Now, we've talked many times about how this is a bit of junk science, junk statistics, because it is a correlation and not a causation. The fact that we're finding more people with marijuana in their systems that are involved in fatal accidents just tells us that we're finding more people with marijuana in their systems, period, in that marijuana has now become legal and more people are using it. My common debunk is to say you're more likely to find gay married male drivers now in fatal wrecks too, because now there are more gay married male drivers. It has nothing to do being gay or smoking pot as to whether or not it caused the fatality in question. We spoke about this with Dr. Mitch Earlywine yesterday, and he pointed out how the important statistic that we should really be concerned with are the fatalities themselves. How many fatalities have there been? And to that end, for our drug war data mining today, we're going to take a look at a little government database that's provided by NHTSA, also known as the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. And I'm going to provide the link for you in our chat room if you're following along. I've made a short link for it, and you can find it at rad-r.us/FARS data, F-A-R-S data. So place that in there, and you should be able to click right on that and take it to the exact same page that I am on right this minute. Now, this is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's FARS data, as we mentioned, and what it contains is fatalities and summaries of that data running from 2011, as you can see on the screen there, all the way back to 1994, as you cannot see on the screen. I'll have to make an adjustment here real quick so that you can see how far this extends. There we go. Get this right there. All right, so extends all the way over to 1994. Now, one thing we can notice is in this first row, motor vehicle traffic crashes, we're talking about fatal crashes, how many actual not people killed, but how many cars that wrecked involved at least one fatality. Looking back to 1994, prior to medical marijuana, we see 36,254 of these fatalities. And in fact, fatalities continuing to climb 37,000 and hover around 37,000 all the way and up until 39,000 they peak there in 2005. But from about 2005 on, we see a rapid decline in those fatalities, from 39,000 in 2005 to just over 29,000 in 2011. Nearly 6,000 fewer fatal crashes from 2005 to 2011. And keep in mind, people are out there still driving GM cars during all of this, right? So 10,000 fewer fatality crashes in the span of 6 years from 2005 to 2011, which also just happens to correlate with the span of time that the drug warriors are always saying marks the commercialization of marijuana in California and Colorado. Primarily, they like to point to 2009, which is interesting because between 2008 and 2009, we saw the biggest drop in 4,000 some, and the year before, another drop of 3,000 some fatality crashes. What could be the cause of these fatalities dropping? Well, I'm not going to say that marijuana use is causing the fatalities to drop, but perhaps fewer people are using alcohol and switching to marijuana. Perhaps we're just getting safer cars. Perhaps the roads have become safer. However, I'm finding that to not necessarily be the case. As I look at another website, just to supplement what I was researching today, I found the Governor's Highway Safety Association, GHSA.org, and their look at speed limit laws for June of 2014. And what we've noted here is that since Congress repealed the national maximum speed limit in 1995, that was the old double nickel 55 speed limit that was national, right? Since then, 34 states have raised their speed limits to 70 miles per hour or higher on some portions of their roadway systems. Now, I think we can assume that people driving faster on the highways is going to lead to more fatality accidents. And looking at the data from 1995 on, we do see those fatalities increasing. But again, once we hit about 2005, those fatalities decrease even as more states are increasing their speed limits. Another page on this governor's site, or as we scroll down on this governor's site, I should say, they list state by state what the speed limits are on rural and urban interstates and other limited access roads. We find states like Colorado have 75 mile per hour speed limit, not just for cars, but also for trucks, for those big rig trucks. So how is it that Colorado has managed to up their speed limit to 75 even for big trucks, and yet the nation has seen a decline in those statistics, in those fatality statistics? Other states are actually raising their speed limits to 80 miles an hour. Idaho, my home state, has 75 on rural and urban interstates, but is going to raise it to 80 effective July of this year. The same goes for, let's see if we can find them down here, Utah, raising its speed limit recently to 80 on specified segments, including one segment where I was being arrested. And Wyoming raising its speed limit to 80 on specified segments. And I find it interesting that we have Wyoming, Idaho, and Utah, the three intermountain states that are the most heavily against marijuana use and often say they are against marijuana legalization because of their fears for public safety. But they have no problem raising the speed limits to 80 miles per hour. All right, what about the children indeed? Now, as we look down the FARS data, continuing down the FARS data, we can also check out the information for the number of drivers, the vehicle occupants, and passengers that were killed in fatality accidents. And again, those numbers are declining from 10,000 almost in 2005 to just below 6,000 passengers killed in 2011, from 23,000 drivers killed to just over 16,000 drivers killed in the span of those 6 years between 2005 and 2011. Now, some people might point out that this may be a different sort of statistic if we're talking about a state like California where there's lots of drivers, or a state like Texas where there's lots of state to drive through. And fortunately, the FARS Encyclopedia breaks that down for us too by providing us details for the fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the fatalities per 100,000 population, the fatalities per 100,000 registered vehicles, and the fatalities per 100,000 licensed drivers. And in each case, we can see a decline from about 2005. Let's see, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. So there's 2005, 1.46 down to 1.10 in fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles. 14.72 per capita, down to 10.39 per capita. 17.71 per vehicle, down to 12.57 per vehicle. And 21.7 per driver, down to 15.28 per driver. So in every measure we have of highway fatalities, of stone mayhem on the freeways, in every measure we have, it shows a decline. Now, at this point, some people might complain and say, but Russ, this is national data. How are Colorado doing? How are Colorado, California, Oregon, Texas, those kind of states doing? And fortunately, if you scroll over to the right-hand side, you'll find a link for states. And in that states link, we can find out all sorts of different information. In this case, we're looking at traffic fatalities by state and their percent change. California, from 2010 to 2011, did have a slight 3% increase in fatalities. Colorado decreased by 1%. Oregon, if we scroll down a little further, had a slight increase of 4%. Washington had a slight decrease by 1%. But none of these would be within the realm of what we would call statistically significant declines. Furthermore, we can find information on each individual state on these fatalities per mile and fatality information as well by checking out our trends page. On the trends page, you can pick a particular state. In this case, I've picked Texas, and get all the information dating back to 1994 on fatal crashes. And as we can see in Texas, fatal crashes topped out around 2003, I should say, at 3,300, and are now down to 2,700. Let's take a look at Colorado, where again, the drug warriors warn us it was just around 2009 that all of the bad things happened. And in Colorado, we can find, again, declines. 2009, when they say the really bad time was 437. The year before, 473. And as high as 677 fatalities, fatal crashes, back in 2002. And for Colorado, we can scroll down and find more information. This is all of those fatality rates per 100,000 population, licensed drivers, etc. All those statistics that we found on the national page can also be found here for every specific state. So no matter which state you're in, this FARS encyclopedia, which you can again find at rad-r.us/FARS data, F-A-R-S data, can provide you a lot of information for debunking and attacking some of these traffic statistics scaremongering stories that come out of Project Sam and some of these other anti-pot people. Now, I've done you the favor of putting some of these together in graphic form. Now, the website does provide you with the ability to make charts. There's a chart button in the right-hand corner. And it'll provide you a nice little bar chart where you can see where the rates have changed. But you can also take this data and you can put it into Excel through an export. And by exporting it to Excel, you can use Excel's graphing capabilities to be able to provide charts like the ones I'm about to show you here. Let me bring you down to the data. Here are the deaths per 100 million miles that I collected from Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and then the United States as a whole. The dark black line represents United States deaths per 100 million miles and extends from about 1.71 down to 1.1. So a decline from 1994 to 2011. But what's interesting to note is the other lines. The light blue dashed line representing Washington, the solid green line representing Oregon, and the dotted red line representing Colorado are, for the most part, below the national settings. Washington, more so than the other two states. Washington has always been safer for drivers than the United States has been. But even Oregon, the green line, stays pretty close to the black line and follows below it since 2004, as does the Colorado line since 2004. This is the kind of information you can use to poke holes in this fear-mongering over marijuana legalization. Now, one difficulty with this data is it's only accurate up to 2011, but I do have some statistics since the legalization that can help us. With Washington State, they did find more drivers testing positive for THC, but they found those drivers from 2012 to 2013 were testing positive over the 5 nanogram limit at a lower rate. The year before, 61% of drivers were over the limit. 2013, 53% of drivers were over the limit. For crashes in Washington State, there were 72 fewer crashes, and there was 1 fewer fatality between the years marijuana was legalized and the year it went in effect. Bob Calkins from the Washington State Patrol even said, quote, "We are not seeing a change in the declining traffic fatality trend since the legalization of marijuana." These sentiments are echoed also in Colorado. The data is a bit harder to come by in Colorado. They don't track the marijuana DUIs as accurately, and they had some problems at their state toxicology lab. But what we do know, 10 fewer fatalities and 397 fewer DUIs. They are finding so few DUIs that in a period between July 2013 and February 2014, they could only come up with 1 per week in the city of Denver alone. That's your drug war data mining for June 3rd. Thanks for joining us. If you have any questions, you can always send me email, radicalruss@gmail.com or russ@radicalruss.com, or just visit our contact page. You can contact me from there. When we come back, we'll have time for a radical rant on how New York is tripping into the Box Canyon of CBD-only medical marijuana.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, the world's voice of marijuana legalization. Cannabis Outreach Collective is an alternative health and wellness option located in Gladstone, Oregon, that serves patients in the Portland area and beyond. You can find out more about Cannabis Outreach Collective on Facebook at COC503 or by emailing cannabisoutreachcollective503@gmail.com or by telephone at 503-853-1319. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Hey, little dude, send your mama and daddy out of the room. I gotta get you up on this. You know who I am. Snake, dealing in weed, coke, crack, your choice. Take one hit and you'll do anything to cop more. Steal from your mama, lie, cheat on your homeboys. But hey, that's the price you pay when you deal with dudes like me. Now, some folks will tell you that I'm dealing in poison. But hey, do I look like the kind of guy that would do that to a kid like you? Yes!
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
You can't can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
Now in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, everybody. 50 after the hour, and I just got to rant a little bit on this end run around medical marijuana being attempted by New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who seems to be firmly in the pocket of the pharmaceutical industry. As Priscilla Simon reported earlier today, the governor has signed an agreement with British corporation GW Pharmaceuticals to provide its Epidiolex in clinical trials. Now, there have been a number of these states, 6 so far, that have passed these CBD-only laws. And the way that it's come about is, of course, Dr. Sanjay Gupta had that documentary where he showed little Charlotte Figi, the girl with Dravet syndrome, a severe form of childhood epilepsy, recovering thanks to the use of a high CBD oil that was extracted from plants called Charlotte's Web. These plants that are very high in CBD and very low in THC. Now, some marijuana reformers were really excited when this happened because they felt, oh, what a great show. It's going to open people's minds up to medical marijuana and move the ball forward. But it also has this unintended consequence, and that is it provides a bit of political cover to politicians who have been avoiding making a stand or who have had the wrong stand on medical marijuana. We saw this in Pennsylvania where Governor Tom Corbett has been fighting medical marijuana for years. Every year it gets introduced in the legislature there, and every year he's against it, fighting it, because law enforcement says it's bad and the health organizations don't like smoked marijuana or whatever the excuse is. But he's always been against legalization of medical marijuana. But as soon as these CBD oil laws started passing and all these stories started hitting on the internet about families uprooting themselves from Pennsylvania and other states to travel to Colorado to use this CBD oil, why, Governor Corbett came out in favor of CBD. Oh, well, this is good medical marijuana because you can't smoke it and there's no plant involved and it's just an oil and it doesn't get you high. And the way that got reported is Governor Corbett changes his mind on medical marijuana. He has not changed his mind on medical marijuana. He still believes that the plant itself is evil and the people who smoke it have a nasty, disgusting habit. So he's not changed his mind a bit. And that's where Governor Andrew Cuomo finds himself on the issue of medical marijuana. It's become more and more popular. Every state in the Northeast has passed some form of medical marijuana. Polls in his state are showing overwhelming support for medical marijuana. And there's 2 bills currently in the legislature that would create some form of medical marijuana. Now, they're not the bills I would prefer. Neither one of them will allow people to grow at home. Both of them have very restrictive condition lists. Both of them do not allow minors to smoke medical marijuana. The version in the Senate is even more restrictive. It would be like the Minnesota law and not allow anyone any access to any plant marijuana whatsoever. But still, those laws would be more workable and help more people than would a CBD-only program. Now, what Governor Cuomo has done is he's revived an old 1980 statute called the Olivieri Laws. There was a man named Olivieri who was in the legislature for whom this was named, had cancer, helped get it through to provide that New York would allow for FDA clinical trials of cannabis for things like cancer. So he's kind of reworked it to include this, Dravet syndrome, this childhood epilepsy, and has now moved forward, signing an agreement with GW Pharmaceuticals to bring in their CBD oil, which is a patented pharmaceutical called Epidiolex. Now, the problem that we're into now is with these politicians using CBD oil as political cover, and some people in the marijuana movement deciding that any sort of win is a win. We ended up now with 6 states that have passed these CBD-only laws. Kentucky and Alabama and Mississippi and Wisconsin and Utah and one other that escapes me at the moment. So they passed these laws that allow CBD only. And now we have New York setting the precedent of we'll have that CBD only be supplied by a pharmaceutical company. This is the Box Canyon theory writ large. This is exactly what we have been predicting ever since my tenure with NORML starting back in 2008. And that is, if you continue to fight only for medical marijuana, your medical marijuana will become medical only. And that's exactly what Epidiolex is the final end logical result of medical marijuana, the pharmaceuticalization of it. The miracle of medical marijuana isn't that it has THC and CBD in it and they can heal you. The miracle of medical marijuana isn't that it has an entourage effect of all of these different cannabinoids and flavonoids and terpenoids that are beneficial. The miracle of medical marijuana is that we can grow it ourselves and treat ourselves. The miracle of medical marijuana is that we take doctors and pharmacists and pharmaceutical companies out of the loop in maintaining our own health. Now, we don't disparage the doctors or pharmaceutical companies or the pharmacies or the surgeons. I mean, if something's really wrong with you, Western medicine and Western surgery can fix you. But it's this case of maintenance, this case of maintaining wellness, of maintaining health, where medical marijuana is the true miracle. That we can have something we can grow in our own homes and backyards. We don't have to go to a pharmacy. We don't have to have Obamacare. We don't have to have medical coverage. We can treat and heal ourselves through nature. That is the miracle of medical marijuana. So when we sign on to these marijuana bills, like these CBD-only bills, we are signing into the Box Canyon and the end of what we consider the miracle of medical marijuana. The miracle isn't in its cannabinoids and terpenoids and flavonoids, because if that's the case, then science will eventually find a way to extract and isolate and combine and use those substances in such a manner as they will be time released, they will be dose accurate, their potency will be guaranteed, the cannabinoid ratios will be perfect. Science will make a better pill, spray, inhaler, or tincture than raw plant cannabis. If we've been basing this medical marijuana argument on how successfully it treats people, we're doomed, because science will come up with better treatments using cannabinoid constituents. So I fear these CBD-only bills where here you've got, like in the case of New York, a pharmaceutical company can step in and nobody gets any access to plant for any reason. Or as we see in Minnesota, where they pass a law that specifically forbids any access to plant. It's time to retool the medical marijuana argument into one of self-sufficiency, one of self-health care, one of breaking free from corporate control. That is the only way whole plant access to medical marijuana for people who want to use marijuana for medical purposes. That's the only way it can proceed forward if we're going to continue with this idea of medical marijuana, this fiction that people should be divided into who's healthy enough to put in a cage and who's sick enough to have compassion for. Of course, the best idea would just be to legalize it outright for everyone, for all adults. And then we don't have to pin our hopes on medical marijuana on how well it treats this particular condition, or is it the best possible drug for that condition. Governor Cuomo just wants to lead New York deeper into the Box Canyon and deeper into the pockets of GW Pharmaceuticals, folks. The fight for whole plant medical marijuana is the fight for legalization. They are one and the same now. That's all the time I got for hour one anyway. Stay tuned for hour two, where we take off the tie, let what little hair we have down, and have ourselves some good times. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. If you got a topic, question, conversation, or criticism, we're ready for it. We'll play some tunes. We got Electric Bob joining us for our daily Toker tunes. And some other surprises, so stay tuned for Toker Talk Radio, Hour 2 of the Russ Belville Show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Priscilla Simon. I'm Radical Russ. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.